Samuel is standing in front of a king who thinks the party's about to start. Saul just rolled home from battle, sword still warm, basically waiting for confetti. His crown, his legacy, his whole royal dynasty starter pack, all riding on this one moment. Instead, the prophet hits him with the single most awkward question. What then is this bleating of sheep in my ears? Not exactly a victory parade. Saul's orders were crystal clear. Destroy everything. Every person, every animal, no loot, no leftovers. So, why is there livestock loudly protesting behind him? What did Saul actually do out there? And is he seriously about to lose the whole kingdom over some sheep? You'll definitely learn something here. If you want to have your regular dose of inspiring Bible stories, filled with timeless lessons to inspire and guide your everyday life, not in a boring lecture style, but in the most fun and entertaining way, be sure to subscribe so you don't miss upcoming videos. This is exactly what Story World is about. Taking ancient stories like this one and showing you they were never just history. They're a mirror. Some believe in every whisper, and some don't seem to bother much. The question is, what can we gain from this? Here's the plot twist nobody sees coming. Saul didn't blow it by losing. He won. He came home a champion. The real gut punch is what he did after the winning. He kept the best livestock and dragged the enemy king home alive, souvenir edition, when every clue was already screaming that mercy wasn't the assignment. That spared king's name was Agag, king of the Amalekites, which just cracks open a much bigger mystery. Why does sparing the life of this one guy from this one nation torch an entire kingship? For sure, your whole body will tremble, your brain will explode, and you will definitely be blown away if you learn that this one nation gets a grudge from God that lasts for generations, and it all traces back to what happens next. The Bible presents the Amalekites as descendants of Esau, but not directly. Think of it like this. Esau had a son named Eliphaz. Eliphaz had a son named Amalek. Amalek became the ancestor of the Amalekites. So the family line goes: Esau, Eliphaz, Amalek. The Amalekites, Timnah, the concubine of Eliphaz, Esau's son, gave birth to Amalek. That makes Amalek Esau's grandson. 1 Chronicles 1:36 repeats the same family record, listing Amalek among the descendants of Eliphaz. Here is why that matters. The Israelites came from Jacob, Esau's twin brother. So when the Amalekites later became enemies of Israel, it was not simply one random nation fighting another. In the Bible's family story, they were distant relatives, descended from two brothers whose relationship had already been full of conflict. Buckle up, because to understand the stakes, you need the backstory. Not Egypt, the empire that literally enslaved Israel for generations. Not the flashy idol-worshipping nations flaunting other gods in plain sight. Amalek, a nomadic desert crew wandering the Negev and Sinai, remembered as descendants of Esau's grandson, basically the Bible's most unassuming main villain. So what did this relatively small desert tribe do to earn a grudge that's contractually obligated to last from generation to generation? But here's what nobody talks about. No archaeological inscription has ever confirmed the Amalekites existed by name. The Bible is basically the only witness on the stand, which means their history isn't proven, it's remembered. Slightly awkward for a nation with a permanent restraining order against them. Archaeologists have not found direct proof of the Amalekites. That means nobody has discovered something like a stone inscription that says, "This belongs to the Amalekites," a city that can be proven to be Amalekite, a record from Egypt, Assyria, or another ancient empire that clearly names Amalek, artifacts that experts can confidently label as Amalekite. Ancient Egyptian and Assyrian records mention many groups from that region, but none clearly mention the Amalekites. Most of what we know about the Amalekites comes from the Bible. They appear in stories about Moses, Joshua, King Saul, King David, and later in the background of Esther. The Bible describes them as a people living in or moving through the desert areas south of Israel, near the Negev and Sinai. They were likely not a huge empire like Egypt or Babylon. Why does that matter? Big empires built giant cities, temples, statues, and written records. Those things can survive for thousands of years, but a smaller group that moved through desert areas may have left behind fewer buildings and fewer written records. So it is possible that the Amalekites existed, but have not been identified yet. Still, historians have to be honest. Possible is not the same as proven. Right now, the Amalekites are known mainly through the Bible, not through confirmed archaeological discoveries, which leaves us with the real question fueling this entire video. If we can't dust for their fingerprints, archaeologically, what exactly did the Bible remember them doing? Open your mind and further enrich your understanding of well-researched knowledge, the foundation of true wisdom. Remember, it's essential to select content that offers something of value. The Israel-Amalek beef kicks off at the worst possible time. Israel just escaped slavery. They're exhausted, running on empty, with zero real army, dragging kids and elders through the desert. Everything's on the line just to survive the wilderness. So where does Amalek strike? The front lines, where Israel's fighters are ready to go, or somewhere sneakier? Absurd. Not the front, the back, where the weakest, most exhausted stragglers were barely keeping up. This isn't two armies squaring off like a fair fight. This is an ambush on the people who couldn't defend themselves. Moses sends Joshua to fight while he climbs a hill and holds his hands up like the world's most exhausting referee. Israel wins. But then comes a line that turns this from one battle into a 1,000-year problem. God declares war on Amalek from generation to generation. That's not the end of a story. That's a life sentence handed to people who haven't even been born yet. Then Deuteronomy throws in a curveball. Remember what Amalek did, but also blot out their memory completely. Remember them, erase them. Wait, which is it? For sure, your brain will do a double take when you realize both. It's not a glitch in the text, it's the entire point. Amalek stops being a people and becomes a symbol, the poster child for cruelty that targets the defenseless. Which loops us right back to Saul, because centuries later, one king is about to be handed this exact symbol as a test, and he's about to fail it in a way that shocks everyone. Oh, buckle up! If you don't get this next part, you could be staring at a pile of gold, and there you are, thinking it's just some fancy copper. Samuel gives Saul a command with zero wiggle room. Attack Amalek and destroy everything. Man, woman, child, infant, ox, sheep, camel, and donkey. Saul's entire legitimacy as king hangs on this one mission. No pressure, Saul rolls out, fights, wins. So, test passed, right? Nope. He keeps Agag alive and spares the best livestock, claiming, very conveniently, that it was all for sacrifice. Samuel isn't buying it for a second. To obey is better than sacrifice. Because Saul disobeyed, God rejects him as king on the spot, and Samuel finishes the job Saul wouldn't, executing Agag himself. The battle was never the real test. Obedience was. But here's what will absolutely blow your mind. If Amalek was supposedly wiped off the map completely, why do we hear about them again? Here's the twist practically nobody catches. If total destruction actually happened under Saul, Amalek should be a historical ghost, gone, erased, done. So why is David fighting Amalekite raiders approximately 15 years later after they torch Ziklag and kidnap the townspeople? And why does 1 Chronicles describe a whole other attack on remaining Amalekite survivors generations after that under King Hezekiah, approximately 3 centuries later? Total destruction was not total, and the Bible isn't hiding it. It's right there in black and white. Which leads to the question this video absolutely cannot skip. The one that stops being fun trivia and starts being genuinely uncomfortable. Just go ahead and check it out. What's the worst that could happen, right? Don't be a chicken. 1 Samuel 15 commands the death of children and infants. There's no cute way to spin that. Readers, including plenty of lifelong believers, have wrestled with this one for centuries. So how do you square that command? Isn't that overkill? Here's the part I can't stop thinking about. There isn't one tidy answer. Some interpreters read it as a singular judgment against a very specific pattern of cruelty, not a template for how wars should go. Others read total destruction as standard ancient Near Eastern victory speak, exaggerated language typical of the period, not necessarily a literal body count. Both readings exist in serious scholarship, and neither one makes the passage comfortable. One line matters more than any theory, though. Amalek was never meant to become code for any modern group of people, which brings us to why this ancient story is a lot closer to your actual life than you'd expect. If you want to expand your thinking and deepen your understanding, come and let's delve together into meaningful studies and find the answer to the question, is it true? Strip away the swords and desert sand, and the accusation against Amalek is uncomfortably modern. They hit people at their weakest, the exhausted, the ones falling behind, the ones who literally couldn't fight back, missing epic stories you didn't even know you craved. Your scroll time deserves better. Join us or show up with nothing interesting to share. Your call. Think about where that shows up in your world now. Not swords, but cruelty that waits for you to already be struggling. The person who strikes right after you've had a loss. The situation that takes advantage of you the moment you're burned out. The Bible's anger at Amalek was never really about ancient tribal borders. It's about what it means to prey on the vulnerable. And that question hasn't aged a day. And Saul's story is a mirror in its own right. Partial obedience that still somehow counts as failure. How often do we do 90% of what we know is right, quietly keep back the 10% that benefits us most, and call the whole thing faithfulness anyway? What if one of the Bible's biggest villains was connected to one of Israel's oldest enemies? Esther 3:1 calls Haman the Agagite, which many readers connect to Agag, the king of the Amalekites. Saul captured Agag alive instead of following the command to destroy the Amalekites, but Samuel later executed him. So when Haman appears as an Agagite, it may feel like an old villain has returned for a sequel, this time with a Persian palace and a very dangerous plan. Haman is also called an Agagite. However, the Bible never directly says that Haman was Agag's descendant. He was probably presented as connected to Agag or the Amalekites, but the exact family line remains uncertain. Stay here for epic deep dive stories that actually hook you, not empty clips you'll regret scrolling. Which leaves the real question behind the title. Was Amalek remembered because of what they actually did? Or because every generation needs a name for the cruelty they hope they never become? Amalek's name refuses to die with the Amalekites. Later, Jewish tradition ties Haman, the villain of Esther, to Agag's bloodline, Haman the Agagite. Though, fair warning, that ancestry is debated, not confirmed. The people vanish from the historical record. The name outlives them as a symbol, which leaves us with the real question hiding behind the title. Was Amalek remembered because of what they actually did? Or because every single generation needs a name for the exact kind of cruelty they hope they never become? As it's often said, the one who forgets the past is condemned to repeat it.